Welcome to the SAMA podcast, where we talk to the most experienced people in B2B to find answers to one simple question. How can you become and remain essential to your strategic customers? Tune in as our guests reveal what it takes to become the supplier they cannot afford to lose. Learn how to level up your account management strategies to promptly deliver speed, convenience, and success to each customer. Let's jump into the discussion right now.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to the SAMA podcast. I'm Nick Halverson, editor-in-chief of SAMA's Velocity magazine. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Namita Powers, partner at ZS. Since joining ZS in 2006, Namita has worked primarily in the life sciences industry, where she leads the firm's commercial models practice area. She's an expert in model strategy, design, effectiveness, and has spent the last decade helping organizations transform their approaches to key account management. She's also the co-author of ZS's book on KAM excellence in life sciences, and she recently joined SAMA's board in 2024. Namita is here with us today to talk about the relevance of ZS's latest research on key account management, including some powerful use cases that highlight why SAM and KAM remains essential strategies for growth. And as a bonus for those who don't know, Namita will also be delivering a keynote speech at SAMA's upcoming Pan-European conference in Paris next month in October, on October 22nd to 23rd, where she'll share some valuable insights on the value of the account manager in an AI era. We're thrilled to have her with us today, so let's dive right in. Welcome, Namita.
Thanks so much for having me, Nick. Excited to be here.
Awesome. We're so glad you're here. So first, I want to kind of talk about this research that was recently published and kind of contextualize it a little bit. So referencing some recent ZS research that's called the Transformative Healthcare Partnerships Key Account Management in Action, you posted on your LinkedIn page that nearly 70% of KAM programs are at risk of being deprioritized, not because the model is necessarily flawed, but because expectations are misaligned. What do you think about that disconnect between executives' expectations and the long-term nature of KAM? Why do you think that persists?
Yeah, look, I think we're living in an era where organizational patience is on the decline, right? People are governed by the street's expectations every quarter. I think, I don't know, it's maybe the TikTok effect, but I think there's something going on where, people don't want to run marathons in a sprinting world. And so This idea of SAM is the purpose and remit of a SAM program is long-term profits, long-term relationships. It's not short-term sales. So you shouldn't be doing a SAM program if your sole objective is to drive short-term sales, right? That's not the purpose of it. And so I think there's a disconnect between what executives even expect and what SAM can give them. The other problem is that SAM outlives leadership life cycles. We're seeing shorter and shorter life cycles for leaders. They're in place for 18 months to 3 years. That's just when you're going to get impact from your SAM program, right? And so people want to do what they can do and what they can control. So I think those are the kind of the heart of the disconnect. But I have seeing a lot of examples of leaders just trying to solve the wrong problems with SAM. I have an example of I was working with a company in a market where, there's not even centralized decision making, but they were like, oh, we should have a SAM program. And I was kind of like, well, why? Right? There's no central decision making there. So anyway, those are, I think, some of the reasons why that disconnect exists.
Yeah. I like what you said. What people don't want to run marathons in a sprinter world.
Yeah.
Just at the Chicago Marathon. So that was right on target. So yeah, one of your key takeaways was the importance of executive engagement. From your perspective, what practical steps can leaders take to move beyond these short-term sales expectations and truly cultivate and sponsor KAM as a long-term growth strategy?
Yeah, I'm I'm a big fangirl of Dominique Cote. She's one of the SAMA board members. And she's written a lot about executive engagement being it's not enough to buy in, you have to be in. And I
Right.
think there's so much in that statement, which is this idea that not like they have to get it, right? They have to understand what it is that they're managing and how it's different.
Mhm.
And so I think there's a skill gap that executives have where it's like, yeah, okay, I get it. I think it's important and I want to manage it, but I don't have the skills to manage it differently than I manage other things like sales and
Right.
marketing. And so one, I think the best execs really get it. So I was working with a company where the US GM of the company understood it so well that when we were putting in place the SAM program, he made a mandate that we're not going to measure sales impact for 3 years. We measured
Mm.
leading indicators for sure, partnerships with customers, high, wide, deep relationships,
Right.
leading indicators, shared metrics of success, voice of customer indicators, but he did not let the organization measure sales impact for 3 years. Then when we did measure sales impact, that's actually one of the case studies that, was in the research we had done. It was
Right.
amazing, right? 2x growth over non-key accounts, right? But it took some time. And so I think the best execs, like the kind of the strategies they can use is take the time to really understand it, build the skills to
Mhm.
really manage it correctly, and then employ those skills to manage it correctly, right? It takes some courage, it takes some true understanding. And so that's what I'm spending a lot of my time. My company's, yes, we work a lot in life sciences. I
Mhm.
am going around the industry literally educating not just the senior most leader, but that kind of N-1 leadership table, because again, it
Right.
outlives leadership life cycles, right? And so I don't want to just educate one person that's going to be gone in 18 months. I actually educate the entire table, because then every year at least half of them stick around.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned that skill gap. Are you guys teaching that, or,
Mhm.
do we turn to, places like SAMA to sort of like fill in these sort of, skill gap areas with, conferences or,
Yeah, we
um,
are
framework?
there's a specific training for executives, right? There's a specific training. It's things like, what questions not to ask in a business review meeting. What metrics do matter? How do customers make decisions? What's your role as an executive sponsor? These types of things. So I'm actually partnering with SAMA. I think one of the things that we noticed was a lot of SAMA's learning content is more geared towards kind of the key account manager themselves, but there's a whole
Mhm.
organizational body that also needs education. So that's one of the things that we might have partnership opportunities with SAMA this year on.
Yeah, that's important. And we're super excited about that. Um, So the case studies that you emphasize in this research, that emphasize that successful CAM efforts are anchored in broader brand and business priorities. So how can organizations ensure that their account strategies don't drift from the
Yeah.
enterprise level objectives?
Yeah, it's a real innovation, I think, that's happening right now, because, to the point of organizational patience,
Mm.
I think that too often CAM programs can be divorced from company objectives. I mean, they should be, part and parcel, but sometimes they're
Right.
not. And the people, like lots of people that hold the budget, tend to be the product owners or the brand owners, and so
Right.
um, making that tie-in is critical. So I am finding that if you can sort of show, here's how the SAM program is driving access or relationships, or
Right.
overcoming these systemic barriers so that your company can achieve these sort of bigger and broader partnerships. Um, Really doing some of that explicit linking to what you care about. Because the other thing is,
Mm.
this is about mutual value, right? It's about what the customer cares about and what your company cares about, and explicitly driving those linkages together.
Mhm.
But sometimes, again, because executives and some headquarters people aren't super well educated on the topic, until you make it explicit and show how it links, they sort of miss a step.
Yeah. And who sort of owns that responsibility for demonstrating that to C-suite? Is that the program leader per se?
Yeah, it's usually something that falls on the program leader. But one of the things, and I know you're going to get to this later, but one of the things that we had discussed is a lot of times these program leaders are spending more time measuring impact than generating impact.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think that it's a lot to put on this leader, which is why until your executives get it and it's like, a strategic pillar on their kind of company
Right.
priorities, you're always going to be pushing that boulder uphill.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, so I know you stress that effective CAM requires coordinated, enterprise-wide program rather than a collection of capable individuals. Kind of the whole is bigger than some of its parts. Um, of course, this approach also requires HQ enablement. Can you share an example, not necessarily from the case studies, but in a broader sense, where strong program design or internal alignment made the difference?
Yeah. There's a saying we have in sales, the magic happens in the 30 minutes of the customer meeting. In
Mm,
SAM, the magic happens in the 30 days prior to the customer meeting, right? These are
I see.
completely different models. So they need to be enabled as such, right? You shouldn't have sales training. You should have CAM training. You shouldn't have sales analytics. You should have a CAM and account analytics, right? So at
Mhm,
ZS, we have a 16-point framework. I know at SAM, I think you have 7 dimensions.
mhm.
But the bottom line is it's a program, right? It's a programmatic approach to enablement that's critical. The other analogy I use a lot is like, it's like training your waiters, but not giving them a kitchen, a chef, ingredients, or a menu, and then expecting magic to still happen, right? Like a waiter without a
Yeah,
menu is like,
right.
pretty good for nothing, right? And so, I think this idea of like executives should recognize that this is a program, not a role.
Mhm,
Don't starve the program you're expecting to feast from, right?
mhm,
So I think that's really the point here. And so if I just think about some examples that we've been working with right now, even just putting an HQ role in place to help a flailing program, right? They put kind of a CAM program coordinator who is like sort of that triage center between all of the customer facing teams and navigating all of the different headquarter roles. They have a dedicated budget to be able to do some funding. They have that kind of dedicated point of contact for all the legal and compliance reviews. Like even just having that infrastructure has made an enormous difference in like a flailing program. And that's just a minor example, right? That's like one role that is changing a lot of things.
right. Um, I know in the research, that I mentioned that I took a look at recently, there was an oncology case study, and the program began, I think, with just like 5 accounts before expanding strategically. Um, what lessons can SAM leaders take from this about thoughtful account selection and segmentation?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest mistakes companies make, especially with like new SAM programs, is to go too big too fast.
Hmm.
I think you need to collect the proof points, and part of the change is it's not just because we're only doing it with 5 accounts doesn't mean it's like piloting, right? It's a make it work mindset, not a will it work mindset. But you start small because you have to make it work. So
Hmm.
a lot of times we're not even picking the accounts that are like the biggest in potential. It's the ones with the best talent or the ones where the client's most willing to partner. Or because we need to make them work and then we can scale to the next set, right? And so that's some of the things that go into account selection, is to be really disciplined about it. The other thing I find is companies are really bad about account deselection. Like, where have
Mm,
we
mhm.
been focused for months and months and it's just not changing? Um, you know, I think that's one of the examples we were talking about was we weren't on formulary in a health system, and it's because the head of the P&T committee that made the approvals of the drugs was like the lead investigator for our competitor's clinical trial, right? It's like we're not going to change that. We're not going to change that, so we got to figure something else out. So those are the types of things where I think we have to be really kind of more disciplined about our account selection.
Yeah. Do you think it takes like a special personality or type person to sort of be able to read those tea leaves to sort of recognize, hey, there's some talent here. We need to sort of, maybe go with this account rather than this one.
I mean, I do think that it's something that we certainly push when we're kind of setting
Yeah.
these up, is to really think about this in that sort of thoughtful way. Then
Mhm.
leaders usually know, right? You know when you have a collaborative team, when you've got kind of the talent that you need. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, totally. I remember that, the report highlighted that many CAM leaders spend more time providing impact internally than generating impact externally. That's kind of the age-old case in SAM and KAM. Which metrics do you think best capture that mutual value of SAM and KAM, and how should organizations maybe track them?
Yeah. I wish there was a silver bullet here, right? I mean, that's what everyone's always looking for is like the golden metric. But what we at ZS recommend is really a balanced scorecard approach, right? It's there you need leading indicators, you need lagging indicators, you need shared indicators with the customer, you need voice of
Right.
customer metrics, right? So you need a combination of these things. And depending on the maturity of your program, what falls into where and how, kind of the balance of each. But that's what I think. It's like there's not kind of one metric to rule them all, but we can take a bunch of different things based on what you're trying to achieve and measure those. Um, the other thing that I really push companies for is, when senior leaders ask the wrong questions, we owe it to them to tell them they're asking the wrong questions, not try to answer the wrong questions.
Mhm.
And so that's the other thing that I think, going back to that education point, but all of that is part of the metrics conversation.
That's good. I like that. So, I mean, what would some of the right questions be?
The right questions is, you know, um, how many departments are we working across in this organization? How high are our relationships? How wide are our relationships? How deep are our relationships? When we've done partnerships, what has been the impact on them, on their organization? Have we reinforced that value at that organization? Right? It's not about, did we sell our products in 3 months after went to them?
Yeah. Yeah, that's big. Asking the right questions.
Yeah.
People got to stand up and do that. Let's talk a little bit about customer alignment and co-creation. Several case studies in the research highlighted partnership outcomes. Such as faster clinical trial participation and stronger formulary access. How do these results illustrate the power of strategic customer alignment and value co-creation in practice?
Yeah, I mean, this is what it's all about, right? Customer alignment and mutual value creation. So
Uh-huh.
we've done a provider organization survey in pharma time and again, where we look at all the big health systems, and the results
Mhm.
come back. The more manufacturers do partnerships, the higher their net promoter score is with these organizations. So
Mhm.
the facts are definitely there. More partnerships, better customer satisfaction. And so, you know, when you are trying to find and uncover these mutual values, um, you actually never know what you're going to find. So I'm going to give you one of my favorite examples in healthcare was we were working with an oncology company, and they had a product that actually kind of had a disadvantage. It was, their product needed EKG monitoring when it was being administered to make sure that like there was nothing going wrong with the heart. The competitor product did not need that, right? That's kind of a pain, right? You way rather just go with the one where you don't need to set up an EKG and
Right.
monitor the patient. Now,
Yeah.
they were working with a health system that had like an oncology primary care initiative. Now, this was a health system priority where they felt like their primary care doctors were not treating oncology patients holistically. So,
Mhm.
somebody would go be an oncology patient and then come back 5 years later to the primary care setting being a completely different patient. And the primary care doctors had no way of like knowing how to treat them well. And
Mhm.
so this health system was like, we need to train our primary care docs, get them more involved in oncology patient care so that they can be better at treating the whole patient. And so
Mhm.
we're like, well, we have a product for you, right? Our product needs EKG monitoring. That's a great way to get the primary care docs involved in oncology patient care. And so what was a disadvantage turned into an advantage because of their strategic priority. You would never find that out if you were only talking to like one stakeholder that was focused on
Yeah.
pharmacy spend, right? You have to understand what do they care about, and you have to get creative with these kind of mutual values, and once you find that, the sky's the limit.
Yeah. That's a perfect example. I love that. Um, yeah, beautiful. Uh, so I know you've more or less been immersed in the world of CAM for nearly 2 decades now. You've built deep expertise, this wide lens perspective on, how the discipline has evolved and where it's headed. Um, what are the one or two like most powerful lessons you want SAM leaders to take back to their organization, their teams, their leaders, especially those struggling to justify and sustain investment in a SAM program?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what we've been talking about, but if your executives don't have the skills to actually
Mhm.
manage the SAM program differently, they don't have the awareness and the education and the skills, so that they're, be in, not just buy in, you're going to be constantly
Right,
pushing that boulder uphill. So, I mean,
right,
it's something you have to do. And then the second thing is that programmatic approach, right? Just like you can't bake a cake with just flour and eggs, you need all of the elements to do SAM well.
hmm
And so taking that proper approach because it's a really different model from other models in your organization, it's super important. I think those are the two big takeaways I'd have.
Yeah, those are great. Those are great. Those are two key items. Um, kind of moving along over to next month in Paris. We have, as I mentioned up top of this episode, we have a big event coming up. SAMA's Pan-European Conference. Again, it's happening in Paris, October 22nd to the 23rd. And, on our event calendar, it's one of the most anticipated gatherings of the global SAM community. And you'll be a big part of that, which we'll get into in a minute. But first, from your perspective, why is, SAM's Pan-European Conference so important to, for strategic account managers worldwide? And I was wondering, what makes it a unique opportunity for professionals to connect, learn, and grow together?
Yeah, I mean, I love the SAMA conferences, right? Both in the US and
Mhm.
Europe. I tell my clients all the time, go there if you wanna feel sane, right? Because oftentimes, right, we're in SAM, right? You feel like you're the ones that
Yeah.
are nuts, your organization's all racing and focusing on quarterly business cycles and reports to the street. SAM
Mhm.
is like a breath of fresh air where you finally feel sane again, like realizing how many others are facing the same challenges and issues that you
Mhm.
are, even across industries. I mean, that's what surprises me so much is that it's so universal across industries, the challenges
Yeah.
and the opportunities. So I think it's essential for people doing SAM to attend a SAMA conference, right? It will just make you feel so like a breath of fresh air for sure. And that's what my clients tell me all the time when we recommend that they
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we're super excited, especially for your keynote. So, Namita, you'll be delivering a keynote at the conference in Paris, and again, it's called "The Value of the Account Manager in an AI Area." I don't want you to give away the secret sauce, but without giving too much away, could you maybe give our listeners a sneak peek at, what you might be getting into and sharing, and specifically, maybe how you see the role of the human account manager evolving alongside the digital and AI advancements?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm going to be sharing some research that we've done on this topic and the 5 key insights that set apart kind of an in-person account manager role versus the technology and AI. I mean, the sneak peek is that the role of the human in an increasingly AI led world centers around something AI can't yet do, which is build and
Mm,
garner trust with our customers.
absolutely.
So I'm really excited to share some of that research and also implications for what it means and how we can kind of enable our teams to sort of capitalize on that advantage.
Yeah, we are super excited to have you, and can't wait to hear that. Um, I think that's a wrap for today's episode. A huge thank you to Namita Powers for joining us today and for sharing such valuable insights from the latest ZS research and on KAM and about the lessons we can all apply to building stronger strategic account management programs. And don't forget, most importantly, you can hear even more from Namita at SAMA's Pan-European Conference again in Paris on October 22nd to 23rd. Again, event is one of the premier gatherings for our global SAM community, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. I just watched a video of the site, and it's beautiful. Lots of natural light. Come and check it out. And to register, you can just head to SAMA's events page on our website. I'll also provide a link in the description below to make things a lot easier. Again, thanks for tuning in, and thank you, Namita. Appreciate you being here.
No, really appreciate it, Nick. I when I was first getting into SAM, I would run and listen to your podcast, and I'm so excited to have been a guest on today. So really appreciate it, and I hope that some of you will listening in will join me for the keynote. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Great. Thanks again for tuning in, and hopefully we'll see you listeners in Paris. All right. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope today's wisdom will lead you down the path of experiencing success in your profession. Remember, the key to successful strategic account management is discovering where your customer wants to go and helping them get there. Subscribe to our podcasts at strategicaccounts.org. We hope you will leave a positive rating and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. If there's something we can do to improve our podcasts, please let us know. That's all for today. See you on the next one.